They are longer.
I actually hit the other one. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yep. I need to turn the volume down here. Yes.
Output devices on that, I guess.
I need to turn this off. That should now finish that. That should now be live.
TV.
Yeah, I turned the volume down there. That's done. We're good right here.
Will that continue to play sound?
That was actually the sound of the video stream playing. Yes. So the out sound is set to there. I was doing two things. I was doing both of them. Yep. So they're getting the microphone from the table and the out sound going over there. Got the video. Good. I will.
My brother died on the 24th, and then we had 2 other calls. But the other, and then the next,
I just turned the microphone on, so.
the very next day, my cousin passed away, and then his wife passed. So we,
You got another minute or two?
this is, after we buried my dad at 2 o'clock the next morning, he passed away. Yeah, and then his, and then his the afternoon. Sunday. Virginia.
Goodness.
It's been a rough month.
Can't imagine.
Saying kind of like
To the end of it, Mr. Coble. And into the, yeah.
Thank you. Calling October 18th meeting to order.
Time, everybody, please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, at this time, we are going to have an election of board officers. On behalf of Mr. Coble, I do want to let you know, I know that he has already communicated with you individually as board members. Mr. Coble is stepping down due to health reasons, and I'm not going to give any further detail other than that out of respect for Mr. Coble. So at this time, the secretary would entertain motions for chair of the Polk County Board of Education.
Move that Mike Ashworth be appointed as chairman.
We have a nomination for Mike Ashworth. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Ms. Page seconds. Are there any other nominations for chair? All in favor of Mike Ashworth taking the chair position, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. We'll also need to fill the position of vice chair, so I would open up the floor for nominations for vice chair at this time.
I move that Rick Koval be vice chair.
Have a nomination of Mr. Coble for vice chair. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Ashworth seconds. Is there any other nomination for vice chair? All those in favor of Mr. Coble being vice chair of the Polk County Board of Education, please signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. And that is also unanimous. Mr. Ashworth, it's your meeting, sir.
I was trying to tell you to change the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Green. At this point, I'll turn it back over to you for Principal Appreciation Month.
The agenda.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to take a few moments and remind folks that October is Principal Appreciation Month. And given what those administrators at our school level have been through over the past 2 years, their selfless dedication to their students and staff is unbelievably strong. And I know you heard from some of them tonight, and we have reason to be very proud of our administrators here in Polk County. So I just wanted to publicly say a thank you to our principals and school administrators at all of our school sites. You've definitely earned your pay. Please, a round of applause. Sir.
Next items on our agenda are for the approval of our last two meetings on September the 7th and September the 13th. 2021, we'll be looking for a motion and a second to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve both minutes from the September the 7th and also September the 13th.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Raise your right hand. All opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we'll move under instructional, and our first bullet point under instructional is Ms. Jan Crump for beginning teacher support plan. Ms. Crump.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. It's another great day to be in Polk County Schools. What you have before you is our beginning teacher plan. And as you know, every year the beginning teacher plan is required by the district to have in place. And the plan outlines numerous items such as the dates and the different times and different avenues in which I meet with those beginning teachers, also in which the principals meet with the beginning teachers and the different formats that they do so. It has guidelines and requirements for how often they observe our beginning teachers in their programs, how they assign mentors to those beginning teachers, and how administrators are required to observe beginning teachers at certain intervals throughout the year. Also, I have the absolute joy and privilege of meeting frequently with our beginning teachers, and I can tell you they are excited about being in Polk County Schools, and we are blessed to have hired some great individuals this year and are super excited about growing our Polk County family. So at this time, I'll entertain if you have any questions, but we're just looking basically for the approval of the beginning teacher plan.
Any questions for Ms. Crump? There being none, I'll look for a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion. I'll second them.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye, raise your right hand.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. That said, next item on our agenda is the school improvement plans, which we just sat through here in the last couple hours. As you all know, we have the Safe Schools plan that we still have to have submitted during closed session. But with that being said, this is an actionable item. We will not take action on it until later in the meeting. Ms. Crump, do you have anything further to add on the school improvement plans at this point?
No, sir. Thank you.
And we will move along. The next item on our agenda is the Head Start construction grant. Ms. Kathy Hardy.
Thank you. I am actually very excited to announce that after a couple of years of hard work from a lot of people, and also from the support of the Office of Head Start in Atlanta, we have been awarded $1.5 million to help us build an annex onto Tryon Elementary to house our preschool program. So again, this was 2 years of collaboration with the federal people at the Office of Head Start, and then our local government, our Board of Education, and then staff here at the central office. So very, very happy to announce that. Do you have any questions?
That is great news, absolutely. Do you have any questions for Ms. Harding on any of this? All right, thank you, Ms. Harding. Next item, we have a couple of overnight field trips. Mr. Green.
Yes, sir. You can see in your, you had FFA veterinary science competition trip proposal and a land judging trip proposal. These are trips that our students are used to taking in the past. We're glad to be getting back to some of these as those competitions are ongoing. These trips have been endorsed by Dr. Brandon Schweitzer, and we did receive them in the time frame per the board guidelines that you have set out for those approvals. So both the school principal and the superintendent would endorse approval of both overnight trips.
I'm looking for a motion to approve overnight field trips.
I second.
Ready for discussion? All those in favor say aye, raise your right hand. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to administrative, our first bullet point here, back to Mr. Green for Safe Schools Crisis Plans.
So just a reminder to the board, as you know, we go over our safe schools planning in closed session intentionally. It's by statute we do that, and that is so that we don't give out information that could potentially allow someone to understand how we prevent or respond to a crisis in our schools. So we will be covering those safe schools plans in detail in closed session, and we'll approve those, like you said, this plans in mass when we come back out.
Okay, again, we will take action on this later in the meeting. Next point, again, back to you, Mr. Green, for COVID update and policy discussion.
All right, wanted to make sure that we provided an update to you as we are to do each month, and revisit our COVID procedures, policy, and protocol in terms of mitigation and those other efforts. I'll wait for that to be pulled up on the screen. I'll go to the first slide. It's a review of the prior context. As you recall, we did institute a temporary mask requirement in response to the impacts that we were feeling as a school system on September 8th. After that mask requirement was put in place, there was a bit of lag time, about a week, and our lookbacks for quarantines produced a significant reduction in those quarantine numbers. The impacts on our students and staff being out of schools were greatly reduced, and we saw no further evidence of school spread after that mask requirement was put in place. Before so, we had one verified school cluster and 2 other potential clusters, and we have not had any since. There was a greatly reduced disruption of the school and learning environment for students. That continuity of instruction is very important to our learners. We also instituted a dashboard at that time that gave the daily totals of cases and quarantine numbers. And we also have added a daily average. It's a rolling week average, so that you're looking at the 7 prior days, and you can see on that rolling average, you get a daily total. If you look at it right now, we're sitting at about 2 cases a day. In terms of the CDC and ABC consortium data that has been acquired from schools all over the state and nation, it does indicate that there's a higher rate of in-school spread when there's no masking mitigation present, about 3 times as likely to have clusters in schools without masks as you are to have them with masks. And right now, with the masking in place, given the quarantine rules we have to follow, that temporary requirement allowed us to pretty much send 6 students home. Positive cases are isolated and the other students remain in school. We go to the next slide. Our current situation that we have now, our temporary mask requirement, is still in place. There is still community and regional spread that is determined to be high by the CDC standards. 98 of 115 school districts in North Carolina still require masks, and there has been no change in our quarantine rules or obligation to follow those health department guidelines. Again, that transmission locally is still classified as being high. That's more than 100 cases per 100,000. But the good news is those cases are declining. I think we had 31 last week, and about 3 or 4 weeks prior, that number was about 100. So we are seeing our school positives decline. The impacts have declined as a result of that. Again, our current number is about 2 cases per day. We also are happy to see that the percent positive numbers are going down in our county, and the strain on local resources like EMS and our hospitals are also starting to, the strain on those resources is diminishing, and that situation is starting to improve. We've also gotten some increased access to testing. I do want to make it clear, as we have all along, that we give no test, no vaccine, no anything to any students without parent involvement. That's requested by the parent, and it has them involved when we go about that. But we do have increased access to testing if we needed to keep students and staff, get them back in school or to keep them in school. The vaccination numbers are still relatively low for our county. They're definitely low for our minors in the county. But students and staff are in school and the learning environment is intact right now. Again, that's our current situation. As we look ahead, I know I've talked with many of you individually about monitoring metrics. We try to provide you with recent updates. You can always monitor our dashboard on our school website. I think it's important for the board and for us as a school administration to make sure we're watching that percent positive number, that we're looking at local spread, and most importantly, that we look at the school cases and how those impacts affect us in the school environment. We need to monitor for pockets of spread, any other variant outbreaks that may be out there as we go through time. And also, we're monitoring DHHS continuously for any change in guidelines or quarantine procedures, which also might impact our decisions regarding a mask mandate or other mitigation efforts. There is word that a vaccine availability for our youngest students, that would be the 5 to 11 population, could be available by late October or early November. That obviously could have an impact on what the board's decision might be going forward. And health experts do recommend, and that's at all levels, several weeks of sustained decline in low numbers before changing mitigation efforts. As a superintendent, I feel compelled to tell you that I would not want to recommend that we do away with face coverings and then back up and have more impacts at the school level with quarantines, students and staff are out of school. So my recommendation to the board would be for continued temporary mask requirement. We'll continue to provide the weekly updates, and I'm happy to entertain any questions from the board, have further discussion about this matter.
Mr. Green,
where are you wanting to see the numbers at per student ratio
versus what the county is, I think it's right now 6.1. Can you tell me where you want those numbers?
Well, I think from a county perspective, you would want to see multiple weeks of a number of 7% positive or less. The recommendation is 5% at the CDC level. I don't think you need to be anywhere above 10% by any means, but you're going to want to see that sustained over several weeks. Sometimes testing is greater than in other times. I think a better measure to use would be getting to a number, 2 or 3 cases in our schools per week would be a better number than 2 or 3 cases a day. And so until we can get to that level for a couple of weeks, that's what's been advised from us, from the ABC Collaborative and other health professionals out there in terms of when you could look at making those masks optional. Also, your regional transmission, your local transmission shouldn't be high. I think that's another factor in there. If you can get that overall number below 100 or 100,000, that's definitely advisable as well.
And again, Mr. Green, as you pointed out in the presentation, we go back to mask optional, we're back to the quarantine guidelines that we had, which is really what put us sort of in the position we were in back around Labor Day, right?
That's correct. If you do not have the temporary masking in place, then any type of positive exposure would result and moving back to the 6 feet, 15-minute rule, which substantially impacted our students and our staff. Again, it would be, I think, difficult to manage that if we allowed it to come back and have to go through all that all over again. Again, the word that we receive from our health officials and people giving us guidance is that you need several sustained weeks of those low numbers. I also think that at some point, as well, if you take a look at, let's say that you're concerned about our youngest students having the opportunity, those families having the opportunity to protect those children. If the vaccination is approved and made available to them that last week of October, the first week of November, there's a 3-week time span after the first dose that they get their second dose. That would put you more than likely right at Thanksgiving or right afterwards. And then there's a 2-week period after their second dose until they're fully protected. So that would get you very close to the holiday break in terms of those youngest students having the opportunity to be fully protected with a vaccine.
Would we be looking for,
You're on.
for a certain percentage of the younger children being vaccinated before we remove the mask?
I think that's up to the board to decide. There has not been a recommendation. Obviously, vaccinations are something that your public health officials will tell you does bear influence on spread, not only in your community, but in a congregate setting like a school setting. And so their advice would be, yes, the higher numbers of vaccinated individuals you have in that setting, the better off you're going to be in terms of containing spread and making sure that you don't have outbreaks in pockets of your school. But no set number has been given to us, and we do not have a high number of our 12 to 18-year-olds vaccinated at this point.
Mr. Green, when they make the vaccine available to the 5 to 11-year-olds, we feel like we're going to have pretty good resources in the county to be able to administer it to anybody who wants to get the vaccine.
Yes, sir. Regardless of how you feel about vaccinations, I think you have to admit that Polk County definitely made those resources available quickly to the public and did an efficient job of distributing vaccines to those who wanted them. I would assume that same level of effort would be applied in this particular situation, and that anybody who wanted a vaccine would be able to get one in a pretty timely fashion.
How many students are we seeing per age group versus elementary versus middle school versus high school? I've been out of the loop of getting the data, so I don't know where we're seeing the most most cases of COVID in the school system.
Right, Ms. Jackson, I know that if you a dashboard, you can see what school those positives are coming into and what the resulting quarantines are. I think you have to take several things into consideration. Number one, your high school has the most students. So in terms of just probability, you're going to see probably a higher number there. Middle school also is a large population school. Tryon Elementary, Polk Central are larger than the 2 smaller elementaries. So some of the spread of those positive cases has to do just with probability. But with 2 or 3 cases a day, for example, we had a case at the middle school today, which I think involved a 7th grader, if I'm not mistaken, and then a case at Saluda Elementary that involved an elementary student. I do not know the grade level. I haven't had time to look back at the actual event to see that. So I don't know that there's any rhyme or reason to, only 7-year-olds are doing this or only 9-year-olds are doing this. We're seeing a pretty good spread. What we find to be a bigger indicator, and Ms. Harding can definitely chime in and tell me if I'm wrong here, but you see pockets of this in community. So when families are connected to each other and they're doing things together, they're going to the same places together, you'll sometimes see that spread. But there's no real pattern over time that has emerged in terms of age groups. If you look at the county's data, you can see that the 0 to 17 group has been consistently higher than the next age group. And so that indicates to me that there is transmission among our school age students.
Is there a number that the health department has given a letter to Polk County Schools saying this is where we're wanting that number to be, or we want to shut down schools? Or is that just a recommendation, like the toolkit says, that for us to try to follow?
I think that in terms of giving us a hard, fast set of metrics, they have not done so. I've requested that if they could get that together for us, that would be helpful. I have not seen anything to date on that. However, I will say that the conversation we have with them regularly is about all of those mitigation efforts being in place. And so, for example, if you were to have masks being optional, you would want to see your spread or you want to see your vaccinations higher. And so all those things are interrelated. But in terms of a specific number, I have not received anything like that from the health department.
And one last question. Do you think that if the numbers keep dropping, that it would be good to maybe open some of the schools with no masks to start with and see how those progress, and then start gradually going with unmasked throughout the whole school system, optional, making it optional? Or do you think it would be, if the numbers gradually come down over the next week or two, since we're looking at a 2-week window, kind of like we did when we put the mask on the children, was 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, that we've done and put masks as mandatory. Would that be something that we would be looking at, or?
I think from my perspective as a superintendent, I would not be able to recommend that you put one population more at risk than another population. So I wouldn't be willing to recommend that. Obviously, the board can take whatever action it sees fit. The other thing I would tell you is that the board always has the opportunity to call a special meeting. If the numbers drop drastically over the next couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, you see that sustained low level of numbers, then the board obviously can reconvene and have that conversation about making face coverings optional. But I would not recommend that one school have them and one school not. I don't think that would be advisable for in terms of my direction and making a recommendation.
I would like to ask the board if we could hold off on the action of this item until after we hear public input on this item, if that would be possible, our board, just to hear what they have to say, so that we can
Mr. Fagan, would that be something that we could defer this until later in the meeting?
Have to be a motion to amend the agenda to do that, or a majority vote.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion that we amend the agenda for the COVA action until after public input.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of moving the agenda item, say aye. Raise your right hand. Okay, this is an action item, but we are going to move it to after public input in our meeting. And with that being said, we'll move on to
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are looking at a shortages in a variety of areas when it comes to personnel.
So one thing we wanted to do is to make sure that anybody who's tutoring in an instructional setting is getting paid consistently. Ms. Ainswood can correct me if I'm wrong. But we would like to make sure that if you have a licensed individual who is helping out with after-school tutoring, we want that to be $25 per hour for that particular individual. That also might be a TA who's got a teacher certification versus it always needing to be a teacher. So it's just to get consistency in that tutoring feature so that we can attract as many people as possible to help with our after-school tutoring program.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an action item. I'd be looking for a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your right hand.
Aye.
Vote carries 7-0. Moving along, now to Ms. Rachel Haynes Wood, with the FFCRA.
Testing.
Good evening. Just a quick update. The FFCRA law that we had discussed before did expire on September 30th. So just wanted to give you an update on the current leave that we're using for any staff that are dealing with COVID themselves. It is called the contagious leave policy. It's a state policy. So basically the changes are that we no longer have a leave, special leave to cover if their children get sick and they have to go home to be with their children, or if their child is quarantined. So they're using their own sick leave now if that happens with their child or they're caring for a loved one who has COVID. We do have contagious leave that allows us to pay them a special leave if they get COVID or they're quarantined. So that is the change to the policy currently. I'm not sure if you have any questions, but that's the quick update. Good news is we're using it less and less. So we're excited about that. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Hayneswood. Any questions? All right, folks, that's an information item only. We'll now move on to the surplus property list. Mr. Dave Shirkin.
Hold it up here. Hold it up here just a second for you all to see. This is our normal surplus. For the next couple of months, you're gonna have a list of surplus items that are coming to us. These are items that are no longer available or usable by us as a school system. And so we're asking you to call them surplus so that we can dispose of them first through a surplus sale. Sale in which we'll put them open for bid for about a 3-week period. We'll then take those closed bids, award them to whoever won the bidding process, and then the rest of it will be disposed of. So it's a list of about 20 lots of items that are out there. Very similar to what we've done in the past.
This is an action item. I'd be looking for a motion and a second.
I make a motion for the surplus list.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. And right back to Mr. Dave Shirkin for a update on the Polk County High School construction.
Starting on Friday this week is going to be an exciting time here at the high school. I told you last month that a lot of our construction was put on hold until we could get, we're good. It was put on hold until we could get the equipment ready and available for us. That we have the air handlers that were back ordered. We had the chillers that were back ordered. All of that material has now been shipped. It's down at the waiting yard, the crane yard in Spartanburg. On Friday, all of that equipment is going to be delivered to the high school here. On Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday, they're going to station the cranes at the various places around the building. They're going to lift the equipment into its particular places. 4 locations on the roof, the 2 new locations for our new chillers. They're going to go in place. They'll then, starting on Monday, begin the next phase of the construction. And that'll be the first time, as we talked about with you before, that we're going to be evacuating some of our classrooms. There's 5 classrooms on the 2nd floor of the building that are going to be, the teachers moved out. They're going to be farmed to different areas around the building. The furniture is going to be moved out. Those rooms are going to be vacant for about a 5 to 6 week period while they redo the HVAC system in those classrooms. At the end of that 6 weeks period, we'll move back into those classrooms and we'll move on to the next classrooms and the next classrooms. And this project should take us until next summer as we work through the building and then continue straight on for next summer to do the end of the building that is right here, the auditorium, the cafeteria, and the gym. So that by the end of next summer, the summer of 22, this project will be finished and we'll be back to a fully functioning high school without any more interruptions there. But all of that is going to start on Friday of this week, and the first classrooms disrupted on Monday, the 25th.
Any questions for Mr. Shirkin? All right, thank you, Dave. Moving on, is there any old business to be brought before the board? All right, there being none, and how about any new business to be brought before the board?
Mr. Chair, I would like to update the board, something we've been talking about along in terms of staffing shortages, but we're really starting to see some impacts on our students, families, and schools. The school bus driver shortage is no secret across North Carolina. I was at a superintendent's meeting last week. One county that has 111 buses was short 36 drivers, and so they're parking about 30 buses a week. We are starting to feel the impact of that. One of the most recent developments that has complicated this matter is that the DMV at the state level has now lost 2 of its trainers. Those are on-the-road trainers that will train drivers in order to get their pocket cards so they can drive a school bus. We have 4 people that are waiting on that training, and they just now posted the position, so I assume it'll be another 2 weeks to a month before we're able to access that training. We were short on subs before that time, and so I just want to make you aware that I will likely send out an all-call tomorrow evening, letting our public and families know that we are experiencing significant shortages on the bus driver side, and that when we have an illness or we have a driver that has to be out or has a family emergency, that there are going to be times when we have to park those buses. And that is an extreme inconvenience on families. We do try to group routes together when we can. We try to do what we can in terms of running a double route. Maybe you have a short route that can go make a run, drop off, and then come back to the school and pick up more. But unfortunately, I do think this is something that will affect us going forward. It's just another thing to add to the list of cafeteria worker shortages, custodial shortages, and I think every business and organization I've talked to out there in terms of hiring workers has that same issue. Bus drivers are particularly, troublesome for us because that's how our kids get to school. A lot of families don't have transportation otherwise. So Mr. Ridings and I have been talking with the state level to try to figure out whatever we can do. We've talked to Polk County Transportation. In my all-call, I will beg anybody in our community that's willing to, that has maybe a CDL that's willing to drive a bus to come and talk with us. But we are just running out of folks to put behind the wheel. I know it's a very desirable job when you go out for 2 hours from about 6 to 8 in the morning, and then you do it again from 3 to 5. And there's so many wonderful things about that as a day of employment. But we'll probably come back to you as well with some suggestions on looking at bus driver pay and a way to facilitate hiring more drivers if we can find it. Just want to make the board aware.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Any other new business? All right, that being said, moving on for your information, we have the September Head Start Policy Council minutes. Notice that we have Focus Area 1 Head Start Monitoring Review starting on November 5th, going through November the 19th. We have the Pre-K monthly report, Pre-K financial report, monthly financial report, and year-to-date credit card report for your information. That being said, also board training. We have board training for the NCSBA annual conference, November the 11th through the 13th in Greensboro. And with that said, we'll move into public input. And a couple things as we open up for discussion. The first of which is I just want to remind everybody that it is our board policy that it's not a Q&A session. We take your input. If there are questions, please reach out to us individually. We will do our best to answer those questions when we can. But this is for your input, and we look forward to hearing from you. The other thing is our policy states that if we're going to amend public input, that we have to place that up for a vote. And it's my understanding that we wish to hear from everyone that wishes to speak this evening. That being said, we would need a vote, a majority vote to pass that and make that happen. So I would entertain a motion to extend public input for us to hear from everyone that signed up this evening.
So moved.
And I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Aye. Those nay, motion carries 7-0. And that reminder, 3 minute limit. 3 minute limit. Thank you, Mr. Baker. That said, the first person on our list is Ms. Teresa Wagner. There's a microphone on each side of the room, folks.
Hello, I'm Teresa Wagner. I'm mother of a 7th grader at Polk County Middle School and a mother of a graduate 2016 who went through the Polk County school system from kindergarten through senior year, now working on her own. I just wanted to take this time to thank you, School Board of Education, for the time and effort you continue to put forth. The excellence and high student performance we see in every area, every day has not just happened. It is not sporadic, occasional, or accidental. It is based on years of hard work, focused strategic efforts by all stakeholders, strong leadership at the board and administrative level, amazing school staff, wonderful support from our community, and all focused on a common purpose, meeting the needs of our students. We must continue to build on our progress and work together, even though we may not always agree on every detail, if we want to have a future of educational excellence in Polk County. Again, I would like to thank you for working to keep our students safe and healthy and offer them an opportunity to succeed.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. At this time, we'll hear from Alan Portillo.
Good evening. My name is Alan Pertil, father of a freshman here at Polk County High School and also a recent graduate. My wife is a North Carolina educator, and so she wrote the script. And usually I stick on her script, but we'll see how it goes tonight here. But thank you for this opportunity to speak. And when my family and I were considering moving here from Huntersville, Mecklenburg County, we kept hearing all these great things about the schools. They say, how can this be? How can this be? And all those things that people said about the schools have come to fruition and are true. And of course, none of us had any idea in summer of 2019 what would happen about a year, 6 months later. But we really are grateful that this district has taken its mission to heart of doing what is right for the students. We really appreciate that. And we can't even imagine how difficult this has been for all education, our teachers, our administrators, and our principals, especially in this month of October as we celebrate them. And just want you to know how much we appreciate you. And thank you for keeping our kids safe and in school. The mitigation efforts you've begun are working, and we really, really appreciate that. It gives us hope for the future, and we really urge you and plead that you would stay the course. And as a pastor in the community, I certainly sense the ways in which the dynamics are at work in our community and fray and pull on us. I feel that even in my own congregation at times, and I urge us all, including myself, that just continue to remember what we all enjoy about living in Polk County, and let's focus on that together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Portillo. We'll now hear from Kelly Hammond.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I come to you this evening with peace and immense gratitude for your service. Polk schools are the gem of our community, and our school system is envied by many who've been unable to replicate our consistent levels of academic success. Operating under the simple credo, doing what's right for students, we're all very fortunate to have such greatness in our own backyards. I'm a very proud mother of 2 students, as well as a business owner, property owner, voter, community volunteer, and the founder of the advocacy group, Polk Citizens for Safer Classrooms. Firstly, I thank you for recognizing the health of all students and staff by pivoting and mandating masks during the recent Delta variant surge. Like many other communities across our globe, our sleepy Polk County was unable to escape the specific COVID-19 spike. Sadly, that surge claimed the life of a school-aged girl in our neighboring Rutherford County. Undoubtedly, the required masks helped to blunt the community spread of this unpredictable virus. Wasn't expecting to notice. Hence, shielding both the most vulnerable of our entire community, which would include children under 12 who've not yet had the opportunity to safely vaccinate. Secondly, I ask you to recognize the reasonable suggestions offered by public health experts. The protocols of effective public health and safety were established many years ago and are not up for public debate. I am not a public health expert, nor am I aware that any of the members of our Board of Education are public health experts. However, we're lucky to have such experts in our own community. Let's take the time to understand and appreciate them. Let's listen to them. And right now, they're suggesting staying the course and not recommending amending changes to classroom safety protocols, including masks. Lastly, we will get through this. There is hope. Pandemics and masks and tests and all the stuff that goes along with it will eventually come to an end. And if we all stay in our lanes and lead in our own unique areas of expertise and work together, we'll land on the other side of this as a stronger and healthier community.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. We'll now hear from William Wagner.
Okay, I just want to say thank you, guys. I am an older white guy that's lived a lot of places in this world. And in 2003, my wife convinced me to move to Polk County. And I was a little bit skeptical of a small county like this. But I've had a son or a daughter in school ever since 2003, except for the 1 year. And I want to personally thank the board because I haven't been able to do that. Although I would thank being a teacher because there's been so many good teachers that educated my daughter and educating my son right now. I'm an engineer, so I understand numbers, and to do away with the mask mandate now would be short-term thinking instead of long-term thinking, which is what the board does. So thank you for all your hard work. Keep it up, and let's move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. We will now hear from Amber Hall.
Hi, board members. By now, y'all all have known me. I just wanted to start by saying that I know that some of the board members are upset and bothered that we, the parents, haven't been showing up to board meetings until all this mask mandating and mask nonsense started. But let me speak on that for 1 second. We trusted you to do what was right for our children, and we didn't feel like we needed to micromanage you. But as we have learned, that is not the case. We have to look into everything that is being done. We are learning, and we are figuring out what is going on. And we are not going to stand for it any longer. With that being said, I want to know when the board is going to start enforcing the no bullying policy that Polk County is so proud of, because that toolkit and the DHHS is nothing but scare tactics and bullying you into following their so-called recommendations. But as you forget, these are all recommendations. There are no mandates in any of these toolkits or anything. And as you forget, mandates are not laws, so you can't force them upon anyone, including our children. You are not allowing the parents to choose what is best for their child. I want to know personally from each one of the boards, are you ready for the lawsuits that are coming your way to hold you personally accountable for these children and their mental issues that come? Because according to North Carolina statute 7B-101, it is child abuse to force a child to wear a mask. Abused juveniles, any juvenile is less than 18 years of age who is found to be a minor, whose parent, guardian, custodian, or caretaker creates or allows to be created serious emotional damage to the juvenile. Serious emotional damage is evidenced by a juvenile's severe anxiety, depression, withdrawal, or aggressive behaviors towards him or herself or others. Child abuse is also listed as encourages, directs, or approves the delinquent acts involving moral turpitude committed by these juveniles. You forcing your agenda on our kids is causing our kids moral turpitude. I also want to know What is the point? And you have said it tonight that you want us to reach out personally via email. I've sent 18 emails personally. I've got 2 responses from 2 board members. Since all you are worried about is the money instead of the mental health of our children, we, the people, are prepared to pull our children out of public school and homeschool them.
Miss, all your time's up. Let's move on. We've done really well. Let's please do everybody a favor. Let's not talk over each other. Let's hear each other out. We're all gonna have different opinions. Let's hear each other. Let's not talk over one another. Let's not laugh at somebody. Let's let everybody get through their speeches. I really appreciate it. Thank you. With that said, we will now hear from Brenda Price.
Hello, board member. My name is Brenda Price, and I'm a parent of girls at Polk Central and now Polk High. I'm coming to you tonight with something other than COVID, something just as dangerous and important. The school line at the high school is beyond ridiculous and unsafe near Highway 108. I'm asking each school board member to go to any Polk County school and watch as teachers load 10+ students at a time. Then I ask you to go to the high school and watch as 2 to 3 kids load. I talked to Mr. Schweizer at the beginning of the year, was able to convince him to move the loading zone to the end of the school building, to get more cars in the parking area at the time, which has done nothing because only 2 to 3 kids are still loading. We should be utilizing the whole area from the end of the building to the cafeteria doors. Why at elementary school and middle school, where we utilize the whole line, but at the high school, we are lucky to get a student to jog to their car. It's dangerous for cars to be sitting out on Highway 108. I watched as multiple close calls at traffic maneuvering through the school traffic. I know it's always been a problem, but after 30 years, we should be able to come to a better conclusion. I'm suggesting we start using the whole area past the stop sign. I'll suggest that you, the school board members, go during the drop off and pick up and see dangerous traffic that we put our students in daily. How our tardy problem is due to the school drop off line. Please, board members, do something for our students, for the ones that are driving. It's dangerous to see them out there on Highway 108, sitting and watching as cars just maneuver past them speeding. So please take time to go to our school and see what our students are dealing with on a daily basis. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Price. We will now hear from Mr. Lee Emerson.
As usual, we're not going to talk about emotional platitudes or compliments or anything. We understand the good things that the school board does, and we commend you for it. But what we're here to talk about today is probably recently the information letter that was sent to you from the Ciradini law firm. And this has verified the fact, first of all, the school board has zero authority to mandate masks or these are medical devices or quarantines. This has to come from DHHS or the local health. Something wrong with this? Okay. Hello? Hello?
I believe he's saying to take your hand off the microphone. That's what's disrupting. I've stopped time. I've stopped time.
Hello? Okay, so you have no authority for mandates. Mandates have to come from the North Carolina DHHS or local boards. They have not done this. They have not done a proper official Chapter 130A order. So there is no mandate. So we know this. We've talked about this before. This is voluntary. But, And Secretary Cohen knows this because once this goes to court, if she was to do a 1:30 mandate, you would lose miserably because the PCR tests are unreliable as admitted by the CDC and the WHO. There's no sample of COVID-19 that's ever been produced, so any tests have no baseline data. The deaths in 2020 were no more than the previous 5 years, so there is no pandemic. Children who are the least affected by this are the most hurt with these mask mandates. And by the way, it's absolutely unconscionable that you want to vaccinate 5-year-olds. The children who have the least problem with COVID-19 have the most problem with the vaccines. You really should not be in the business of even discussing vaccines. This should be done by our health department, not you all. You are completely overreaching your authority here. Now, And if your attorney is relying on Chapter 115C of the North Carolina General Statutes, again, this is a broad overreach. Nowhere to specifically say you can do these mandates as a school board. Okay, North Carolina is one of the states that says what you can do, not you can do anything that they don't say. You have to stick with what they say you can do. There's no language in there for you to be doing these mandates. But you school board members are basically the front people of a color of law fraud that should be very concerning to you all, because you are doing something that is beyond your scope of mandate. And this is something that I can say that, you know, knowing that this attorney will be issued, it's a DPJ test, has also given you this information. I think you should understand where this is.
Mr. Emerson, your time is up. We will now hear from Mr. Tony Dale.
We hope. We will see.
I think another microphone's on the way, Mr. Dale.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so first of all, kind of following on Lisa, thank you very much. I agree that the mandates, as you're calling it, the quarantine policy, first of all, are arbitrary, discriminatory, and they are not science-based. I think you could have seen your own president this weekend. It was all over the news today without his mask on, our former president of his party. If this were truly such a dire, dangerous thing, I don't think these very clever people would be walking around without masks in big crowds. Children, though, is a whole other thing. First of all, I'm going to quote Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA director. He said, "Nobody knows why the 6-foot distancing thing came along. It's completely arbitrary, and it is not based on science." The fact is, right now, we know for a fact, statistically, this has a 99% survival rate. That means, therefore, it is not an imminent hazard under NC's General Statutes 138 and 2, quote, "immediate threat to life, serious injury, adverse health. Those are the definition of immediate action needs." This does not fall under that. Furthermore, CDC stats for those under the age of 18 are shockingly low, basically 1/1000th%. Fewer than 400 people under the age of 18 have died. And the IFR is the number that we should be talking about. But when you quote general numbers and they're not demographically positioned, then it looks quite threatening. But when you realize the chances for a small child, anyone under 18, to be dying of this, what we're really talking about is just a flu. And we've had flus before, have we not? I'm going to quote one thing from the letters that our attorney sent you that I think is worth considering. School boards have serious legal consequences for exceeding powers and authorities under Article 5, Chapter 155C, for wrongfully exercising authority, Article 6, and also 130A in Chapter 90 of the General Statutes, infringing on U.S. North Carolina constitutional rights of parents, students, and staff. Otherwise, school boards and their members may be found to be acting manifestly in an arbitrary fashion, Thus, I would ask the members of the school board to seriously reconsider the position, begin to act in a prudent and lawfully manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. So now I have Mr. Bob Muskels, and I apologize if I just butchered your name, sir.
Thank you again for the chance to speak here. Doesn't look like anything's changed. With all due respect, Mr. Green, I'm going to give you an A in creative writing, because that was amazing up there. See, I've got facts and figures here that masks do not work. Even your gold standard N95, unless it's professionally fitted and sealed around your entire face. I wore a mask when this thing first came about. As I said, it was droplets. It was spread by droplets. The CDC now knows it's an aerosol. 0.09 to 0.12 microns. These masks don't come close. These masks do not come close to filtering out that kind of aerosol. Now, let's not confuse the argument here, because I'm hearing a lot of emotion. I'm hearing a lot of fact. You can wear your mask. You can wear your mask. That's your right as an American. Well, I'm a free man too. If you believe those masks work, I've got one question that's very simple to answer. If the masks work, don't make me wear one. I'm no threat to you. Their children wear one, has to be the parent's choice. There are literally 20 to 30 bacterial agents that form on a mask in a matter of 5 hours. The CDC says a mask shouldn't be worn more than 100 minutes without being changed. And we're asking kids to go to school wearing cloth masks that do nothing. They drop on the floor, they pick them up, stuff them in their pocket, put it back on their face. That's why it is tantamount to child abuse to muzzle a child. If you want to muzzle your child, you do it. But it should not be a mandate, period. We are a free people. I am for health and safety as well. And if you believe your masks work, what's the problem? So I'm going to ask one thing when you go to bed tonight. You go home to your families. If your kids are around you, are you wearing masks and your kids are wearing masks? If they are, I'm going to pray for you because that's silly. Okay, but if they're not, that makes you a hypocrite. Okay, because the disease doesn't decide to not follow you home or to school or to the store. It's a virus. And with all due respect, Mr. Green, that numbers you showed up there, that's a natural course of a virus. It has nothing to do with the mask because the masks don't work and the facts show that. So please pay attention to that.
Thank you, Mr. Muskos. I will now hear from Michelle Scribner.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Just one short comment. You've asked us to send questions via email or some other way since you can't answer questions here. And I have repeatedly to every board member, I have sent the same email for the last 2 months, and you do not answer me. I need to know why. Okay. Our system of laws and government have a divine pedigree. Our laws come from the Constitution. The Constitution comes from common law. Common law comes from natural law. Natural law is God's law. Any laws, mandates, or ordinances, rules, regulations at all that are repugnant to God's law is not law. Is not law. So in our Constitution of North Carolina, in our Declaration of Rights, Section 7, it says, all power of the execution of laws by any authority without consent of the representatives of the people is injurious to their rights and shall not be exercised. So, you might be thinking, well, this is a special circumstance. Well, the folks who wrote this Constitution, under which we are still protected because it has not been repealed, had an answer to that. It's called Section 35, Recurrence to Fundamental Principles. That means we are to be reminded why we have government and under the principles by which it should operate. And those principles are this: God is sovereign of all nations. That's in the preamble. That's in our preamble. That has not been repealed. We are under God's law. He is sovereign. And he has given us these religious and political and civil rights, which cannot be acted against by any authority without the consent of the people. And we do not give you our consent to muzzle our children, to cover their faces, to make them
Ms. Ridley, your
breathe
time is
in
up.
their bad air. Thank you very much.
We will now hear from Ms. Hall.
It cannot be stressed enough that the Secretary of Department of Health, Human Resources, or a local health director must order the control measures to be implemented to address an imminent hazard. North Carolina General Statute 130A to 20A. Without an official Chapter 130A order, the county school board should not implement the toolkit since it constitutes control measures, which have not been officially ordered under the statute. This places the school board at significant risk of legal liability since they are in violation of Chapter 130A and individuals' fundamental constitutional rights. Such decisions will likely be found to manifest abuse of discretion, particularly where the control measures are harming children, as in case here. North Carolina General Statute Section 130A to 145D outlines those rights. Any person substantially affected by the limitation may institute in Superior Court in Wake County or in the county in which the limitation is imposed an action to review that limitation. The official who exercises the quarantine or isolation authority shall give the persons known by the official to be substantially affected by the limitation reasonable notice under the circumstances of the right to institute an action to review the limitation. If a person or a person's representation requests a hearing, the hearing shall be held within 72 hours of the filing of that request, excluding Saturdays and Sundays. So the reason why I bring up this law is that as a parent and other parents, we have not been told that we have the right to have this looked at and reviewed by Superior Court in Polk County within 72 hours. Not last school year or this school year. So I asked the board, since we're allowing our health department to quarantine children, then that we also ask that you look at the health department and make sure that they're also doing their job correctly. That is the school nurses making sure that they read the law if they are officially authorized by the health department to do that. And the only way that they can do that if they have permission and they actually work for the health department. No one is telling parents that they have a legal right to have their child's quarantine reviewed in this county. That should have been told to parents last school year. We did not know that right. We are now learning the law, and this is North Carolina law. So I ask each one of you to remember that you're legally liable, personally as a board member and civilly. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you in advance for listening. Obviously, I'm in favor of voluntary mask wearing. I have a couple of points, and most of my points have already been talked about, but I'll go over them. One of the main points that you already know is that the survival rate for COVID is 99.9998% for children. So the risk is very low. We've already gone over testing the PCR test. Of course, that issue, we don't know the number of cycles that are being used for testing, so we don't know the accuracy. We've heard that 35 to 40 cycles is too high, but how many of you know what number of cycles are being used for the tests that are being conducted here? The other point that I have is directly from the CDC science, but it was before it was criticized because they had testing for influenza that was verified as being influenza. And these tests were done between 1946 and 2018. Now, there's an abstract which I can send to you with the details on that, but it's a non-pharmaceutical measures for pandemic influenza in non-healthcare settings, personal protective environmental measures, published in May of 2020 at the CDC. And basically what it comes down to is disposable medical masks, also known as surgical masks, are loose-fitting devices that were designed to be worn by medical personnel to protect accidental contamination from patient wounds and to protect the wearer against splashes or sprays of bodily fluids. There is limited evidence for their effectiveness in preventing influenza virus transmission, either when worn by the infected person for source control or when worn by uninfected persons to reduce exposure. So I can send this information in an email if you want that for your records. Thanks for your time.
We will now hear from Mr. Dick Shawson.
Good evening. The progressive left figured out long ago that to foster acceptance of the socialist government in America, the key was to controlling the curriculum in the public schools. Under Barack Obama, education elites went into high gear with their push for Common Core, and the money started flowing to left-wing groups. But not achieving complete success with Common Core, leftist academics and activists plotted to do. And they introduced a new brand of socialism through the introduction of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, social emotional learning, SEL, and critical race theory, CRT, and on and on. Again, billions of dollars began to flow into public education. And I asked, for whose benefit? Not the children. In prior appearances before this board, I briefed you on the leadership of North Carolina Association of Educators, Tamika Kelly and Brian Prophet, both avowed Marxists. I wonder if you called for them to step down. I briefed you also about James Ford, who is part of the North Carolina Board of Education. Ford is a BLM activist and avowed racist. He is an outspoken advocate of SEL and CRT in the classroom. Have you called for him to step down? He owns a company called Creed, and guess what that company is all about? Trains teachers and students in the arts of CRT. Now, your parent organization in DC, the National School Board Association, a known left-wing socialist special interest group, dispatches a letter to President Biden asking him to invoke the Patriot Act against parents. Have you denounced that action? On Monday, October 4th, after receiving the letter from the NSBA, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland ordered the FBI to mobilize against parents. Have you denounced that action? The silence from this school board has been shameful, not just on local issues, but on the national policy that directly and indirectly affects education across the country and in this county. Anyone in a position of leadership today that isn't speaking up on behalf of morality and liberty and the proper education of our children is derelict in their civic duty. Public education in America.
Mr. Shaughnessy, your time is up.
Thank you.
We are now here for Diane Love. What? Diane Love? All right then, Mr. Ray Allen.
So by your logic, we should not be wearing masks right now due to, say, like around 5 to 7% of cases countywide, where, like you said, you dropped something about the mandate. Well, since the beginning of COVID, countywide, the total numbers are around 10% since the beginning of COVID of people just catching a case. The mortality rate statewide is 1.2%, and countywide is 1.9%. This is the death rate, or not the death rate, the death ratio of cases caught and people actually dying. And then if we have our worst case scenario of people catching cases, 0.1% of the county has caught COVID. That day, on September 13th, this is the worst case scenario, shortly after you guys put out that mask mandate, 0.17% have caught COVID-19. Recently, October 17th, yesterday, 0.002% of the population has caught COVID. And that's for a weekly recent. And then of that day, no, not a single person got COVID. So again, by your logic, we should be out of the mask mandate right now. Okay, you guys are good.
Thanks, I know you support him. I know you're in his corner. Please let him talk.
And we can see a spike, a minor spike in the charts for Cole County. The most ever hit was 36 new cases in a day, which is the worst case scenario on September 13th, shortly after the mask mandate, and then it proceeds from there. But before then, around July 1st, it had been slowly, progressively going up to around 21 cases on a 7-day average. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. By your logic, we should be out of mask mandate right now.
This is Mr. Jason Allen.
Good evening, thank you for your time for listening to me. So you've already heard constitutional rights, legal issues that lots of people have addressed. I read through that Smart Schools Toolbook and toolkit, however you want to reference it. It does talk in circles, okay? I've gone to the links from the CDC, read the journals from the New England Medicine Journal, all that stuff. And, you know, they like to doctor everything up, but I'm gonna go back to some common sense items. So you go to a track meet and you got 6, 7 different schools, well over 200 kids there, all running without masks, teachers without masks. But yet they go back into the classroom and they're getting yelled at to wear a mask. Those kids are closer together there than anywhere else. That makes no sense. My whole opinion on it is respect one another. I've got a men's group I go to on Monday mornings, bunch of Christians. We all have different views. We're all from different churches, okay? But we go there to discuss things and we respect each other's choices. And that's what this boils down to. If people choose to wear a mask, so be it. I have nothing against you for it. I'm not judging you for it. If you choose to get vaccinated, I'm not judging you for it. Don't judge me for not wearing one. If the vaccine works so great, and the mask works so great, then we wouldn't have a problem right now. Okay? And I find it ironic that you waited, you took the mask off, chose to do this at the beginning of the school year, when we all know, any of us that have had children, starting in kindergarten all the way up to the beginning of the school year, everybody gets sick. Snotty noses, cough, sneezes, everything. So, and from what I understand, the kids can just say they've got a headache and it gets classified as COVID. Now, I'm a little more curious about that. So, that brings me back to around that little experiment to get your school money and funding for the kids is how I felt how that turned out. It was a switch and bait deal. That was a switch and bait deal. You did it to get the money and that was it. So, also another thing that I think is chicken, and I mean it with all my heart, okay, it's coward to have a school board that we can't get an open forum with. This is ridiculous. It's wrong that we can't send a public forum. We shouldn't have to send an email. It should be as simple, I ask, you answer, and we respect each other and give an answer. Question and answer. And that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
We'll now hear from German Ruiz.
Hello. You know, I hadn't seen any metrics until today. So all the decisions being made on these masks seem really arbitrary. The community spoke loud and clear about optional masking, and the school board is acting unilaterally without providing information on how exactly these decisions are being made. Who's making the recommendations? What's their track record? I speak for a few families I know who have removed their kids from the school system and now homeschool because the masks are such an undue burden on them. Again, what are the metrics being used? How many cases exactly are we looking for before the masks are optional? How many cases before remote learning? It all seems arbitrary because nobody's provided concrete data. Masks worn at schools do not stop the viral particles. Basically, like trying to catch anchovies with a chain link fence. With vaccines widely and freely available, we should be easing restrictions at this point. Follow the science. Children are not a high-risk group, and teachers can wear a mask or vaccinate if they choose or do neither. Mandates are not law. Needless to say, the fact that we're even discussing vaccinating 5-year-old children is terrifying. Now, I've got a second item I'd like to speak about. My kids have been coming home asking very disturbing racial questions. CRT is being taught in our schools. My background is in higher education. I studied Marxism, French postmodernist, in Frankfurt School, intersectionality, and it's all revisionist history. It's a weapon. It seeks to subvert agreed on historical facts through the lens of perpetual victimhood. When I speak to other parents in the community, members of the community, what they tell me that their values are, they don't match what's being taught in the schools. Teachers can deny it or call it another name, but it's being taught. And teachers cannot be activists in the classroom. And any educator found to be doing so should face disciplinary action
and including termination. I'm an immigrant, American, and I'm not a victim. And I don't want my children being taught neo-Marxist, postmodernist propaganda. We need to have more oversights into what the kids are being taught in the classroom. Last year, I couldn't even go into their classroom, so I don't know what's hanging up in their classrooms or what it looks like in there. So we need to focus more on STEM field education, and we need to reject any form of political or ideological revisionist history. Focus on STEM education and leave the medical decisions between parents and their personal medical providers.
Your time is up.
Hi. Thank you for helping to keep our schools safe as possible. While you've certainly heard frustrations and threats from some about students being made to wear masks, I can say with certainty that being worried about our children spending all day around others not taking appropriate precautions during a pandemic is a much greater concern. I'm happy to report that my kid has reiterated as recently as last night that it's really no big deal to be wearing a mask in school all day. And that really the only issue that needs to be improved on, according to her, is correcting the students who still don't know it needs to go over their nose too. To be honest, the decision of whether to mask up indoors during a pandemic, at least while there are still so many unvaccinated, is really much ado about nothing, it would seem. It's as if the movement to not follow the recommendations of epidemiologists and other experts is coming not from documented cases of masks causing harm, but on a more national front, politically motivated forces trying to politicize our otherwise nonpartisan school boards. Or maybe this is another conspiracy theory. It's my hope that you can see beyond this unnecessary division. Lest we think that we move safely enough beyond this and we can let down our guard, let's indeed remember that last month, Rutherford County lost one of its high school students. And I am really glad that there was the moment of silence dedicated to her at the homecoming game of ours a couple weeks ago. Let's also note that this morning's news headline that we lost our former Secretary of State, General Colin Powell, to COVID this morning. One thing I'm not,
Please, don't interrupt.
One thing I'm not clear about is to what extent you hear from our teachers about their recommendations regarding masks. I think they are among the best experts, along with the public health officials. Thanks again for keeping our schools safe. Again, let's not let down our guard prematurely. We all want this under control sooner than later. Thanks again.
On our list is Ellen Rogers.
I promise that Martin and I did not orchestrate this. I happen to be a teacher in Polk County. I am also a mother of a child who has gone through Polk County schools, starting at her 3-year-old pre-K class. And so it's a thrilling place to work. It is a thrilling place to have my child grow up. So I'm going to speak a little from the parent perspective, a little bit from the teacher perspective. The kids are good. They are okay. At least they are in school. They're happy. I believe the phrase is the eyes are the window to the soul. We can see those eyes. They shine. It's wonderful. We learn. They play. There aren't complaints. So I can tell you that your children are not being muzzled. They're quite able to talk through the masks. They're quite able to hear with masks on. They're quite able to learn. And I am truly grateful to have the opportunity to be in the classroom with them.
So that takes me to, I think the only numbers that we truly need to look at, or you all truly need to look at, are the pandemic started, masks were mandated by our governor, thankfully. All of last year, we were wearing masks. Not only did we not have but a few quarantines from COVID, we didn't have absences for the flu, we didn't have absences for strep throat. It was the highest attendance rate in any of the years that I've been working at the school. Masks came off, we got a little complacent. The numbers of COVID went up, the numbers of other things went up. Matt, you all mandated masks, thank you. The numbers of COVID cases have gone down. And we're not just talking about what's happening with the kids in school. The disease goes home. Someone was talking about how it's carried around. Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. So as a teacher, just me personally, last year was less stressful than the beginning part of this year, when students were not, when no one was required to wear the mask, when it was optional. Once they became mandated, temporarily mandated, the stress level went down for everyone. Not only because we felt safer, but because we finally became fully staffed. We had not been fully staffed in the first 3 weeks of school because of all the absences due to.
Ms. Rogers, your time is up.
Okay, thank you very much.
We will now hear from Jennifer Lawrence.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Lawrence. I'm a parent of a 4.5-year-old that just started pre-K. Thankfully, due to the mask mandate, I felt safe that I could send him since he is too young to be vaccinated. And yeah, just thank you all for keeping the schools safe. And I'm not here to talk about politics or any conspiracy theories. Just here to state that you all are doing a great job, and yeah, thank you for mandating these masks so people can feel safe to send their kids to school and parents can get a break at home. And I work in healthcare, and I know that I feel a little bit better about that I'm keeping the people that I work with safe that can't wear masks. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't have any fancy speeches written. It was spontaneous to come here, but just wanted to say thank you and to just give my 2 cents for what it's worth. Thanks.
Next is Mr. George Allen.
Thank you. Yeah, I've had a couple kids come through the school system. They're gone now. And I just wanted to come today to kind of support you guys as board members. I know it's extremely difficult to balance everything you're trying to weigh, from science to politics to legal, and the difficult decisions that you all have to make going in and going out, and also kind of taking it on the chin for everything that's going on. I appreciate you extending the time, letting everybody have their word. And I applaud you guys for the work you're doing. I know it's difficult. I lead a local nonprofit. I've had to weigh, the pros and cons of masking versus not masking, requiring vaccines, not requiring vaccines, and I didn't take it lightly. It was very difficult. It's kept me up at night often because I'm pretty much a moderate, and I listen to arguments kind of full circle as much as I can. And every time you answer one question, there's 3 more questions that need to be answered. And I know you guys have got a difficult job. I know people in the community are really upset. So congrats on the hard work you guys are doing. Keep it up.
Next is Maria Freeman.
Thanks for hearing me. I am a 20-year educator of Polk County Schools. I've spoken with you guys before, so thanks for hearing me out. I'm also a parent of a freshman at the high school here. And I can tell you that in my 20 years in Polk County, I have never felt so much stress as we did beginning of the school year. And I can tell you that no matter what your opinion is, what your feelings are, we felt stress because of this, because of the anger and frustration, which I understand everybody has their opinion. So what we're feeling at the ground level is that no matter what, we want to be in school. Teachers want to teach your kids. We are all here for the purpose of educating your students. And that's what we want. And if we can't be in school because of the masks, because of the guidelines that are being handed down to what we only know what to do, right? You only know what to do because those are the guidelines that you know. And if that's what's keeping us in school right now is wearing the mask, I can't see why we don't want that. If you want to talk the mental health of our kids, I can tell you that not being in school consistently, not coming to see your teachers every day, not seeing your friends every day. I have students that go to job sites because we're working on job skills and life skills. If they can't do that every day, their mental health is extremely impacted by that. And they're also impacted by their parents maybe. You know, I hate to say worst case scenario, we have had students that have lost parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and siblings, and they've had to watch this, and we have to deal with that in our mental health on a daily basis. So I'm just asking that you take into consideration the extended time to continue this because we haven't had consistent school, and since the mask mandate, we have seen such a calming in our schools. We've been able to learn consistently. It has emotionally, the culture of our school is totally different. If you walk the halls in the first 3 weeks, it was stress. You could just feel it. You could cut it through the night, stress in the school. And if you come through now, I just said like 2 weeks ago, man, I really feel like we're doing school now. Like I really feel like we're learning, we're in it day to day, and I can't tell you what that feels like. I can only tell you what it feels like. It is not a fact, it feels right here. You know, but I'm in it every day. I'm in it, I feel it, I'm here, I know the culture of this school, I know the culture of middle school, Ellen knows the culture of Saluda. We feel these every day, and I'm telling you, it is different because we're learning math. I'm telling you it's different, and it's really helped us move on with school and just do with our kids what we're supposed to do, educate. So I'm telling you, the only thing we should worry about is educating our kids. I'm inviting you to come to the school and talk to us. I'm inviting you to come and see what it's like at school right now, because it's totally different. People are happy, the kids are happy. I have not heard one kid that's complained about wearing a mask. What I have had is kids having trouble being home. They don't learn online. It's not a good option. We have to have the kids in front of us. That's one thing that we learned through the pandemic.
Ms. Freeman,
We
your
have to
time's
have
up.
the kids in school.
I don't want to hear it again, please. Mr. Jeff Harris.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Harris. I'm a parent of 3 students in the Polk County school system, and I'm just here to say thank you. Thank you for the mask requirement. Thank you for your hard work. It's been a really long 20 months. Everyone's exhausted. Everyone's ready for it to be over. I know what it's like to make decisions and be criticized for them. But I'm glad that you have made responsible decisions for our students and for our community, and I'm very grateful. I know that many other people are. Thank you.
Mason Jackson. Mason Jackson.
As a parent of 2 here in the county, 2 kids that love to go to school, they love teaching and what's going on. I think putting the mask in the mandate, or at least encouraging it strongly. My son's really excited about wrestling starting up, and we're going to try to figure out how to do that and do it as safe as possible in just a couple of weeks.
Thank you for looking at real science, real data that's being put out, and making decisions based on that, because that's what education is about. That's what you're teaching our students to do, is how to look at data and how to look at what's going on in the world, what's happening, and make wise decisions moving forward. So I thank you for encouraging that and using that. You have my time.
Billy Williams.
Good evening, board. I just wanted to thank you for allowing us to speak prior to voting on the mask policy. I'm a lifelong Polk County resident. I graduated from this great high school in 2003, and I am a mother of a kindergartner. And I'm coming to you tonight as a mother. I went to college. I said I was never going to live in Polk County. I couldn't wait to get away. And as soon as I was gone, I couldn't wait to come home. And so when I came back home, I knew that I wanted to buy a home in Tryon because I wanted my kid to go to Tryon Elementary. And it wasn't until it was time to enroll my son this summer that I ever thought twice about sending my child to school here. That's just what I was going to do. There was no questions, there was no second thoughts. But then when the required masking became an issue, I actually looked into sending my child across state lines to South Carolina because they did not have a mandate. I've also looked into private schools, Christian schools, homeschooling options. My child came from a preschool that had no COVID restrictions in 2019 or 2020. They were not required to wear masks. We simply filled out a questionnaire each morning asking those basic, did they have these symptoms? Have we traveled anywhere? They did have their temperature checked at the door, but that was the end of it. There were no social distancing, and my child flourished in that environment. He is a late August baby, and so I asked his teacher, I said, do I need to hold him back? And she said, he would be bored, send him. And so he thrives in the classroom. He loves the classroom. He's been dubbed his class's mayor because he likes to answer all the questions. And I understand that people as parents, we feel very passionate about this policy on both sides, and I get that. My husband and I are both nurses, and we've done the research. And we feel by making the masks optional, we're allowing parents to do what's best for their children. This is not, and I repeat, this is not politically driven. It is my God-given right to parent my child. And that is all I'm asking that you let me do. And just to make a comment, what you think my child is feeling or what you think my child is dealing with might not be what my child is actually dealing with. I know personally a mother whose child is asking and begging not to wear a mask. But when she approached the principal said, well, she looks happy in school. But you don't understand is that when they come home, they know that they're safe and they know that they can talk to their parents.
Ms. Williams, Madam Board. Last one on our list is Mr. Stephen Lohick. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. And let everyone talk. It's quite nice to open the door because the last time it was a rough crowd. So I appreciate the fact that you let everyone speak. My daughter is a student here at the middle school. So I've got a vested interest in having her go to school. And I got to admit, I didn't do any homework for this speech here, so forgive me. I don't have any statistics. I don't have any internet facts. Just the goal is to keep them in school. They've got to go to school. It's just that simple. They need to be educated.
you look at a cause and effect. If, when we didn't have the mask mandate, the numbers went up, you put the masks on, numbers went down. I get less phone calls from Superintendent Green, which your messages last year were great. I really appreciated the whole county, good days are ahead. I missed that. Hopefully we'll get to that point. And just the goal is just to keep them in school. I did see a news article about Kershaw County. It was a optional mask, but their vaccinations were much higher than Polk County. You know, you guys are all smart, make educated decisions, and we go with it. I can guarantee one thing, after being at the last meeting, you'll never see me on a school board. Not gonna happen. I don't care how much money they offer, never. I appreciate the people that have been very respectful. Hopefully one thing that'll come out of this, getting more people to come here, listening at the last meeting, which kind of shocked me, listening to the trouble you're having with school lunches. If it weren't for this COVID stuff, I never would have heard that. I think if more of us stay involved, hopefully we'll do better, and we all take interest in improving it. You guys are exemplary and helping this school district do as well as it was. I was really impressed with the numbers. I mean, that's something that you got to be extremely proud of. This is a difficult situation you guys have been put in. You shouldn't have been put in it. There's no winning. You're going to piss one person off and the other one's going to be happy. Make the best decision you can. Let's all try to live with it. Be respectful, regardless of, you know, and the thing is, the ultimate goal, keep the kids in school. We need the kids in school. We need them healthy. If they're not healthy, parents stay home.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, thank you all for your input. Thank you for keeping things calm. We appreciate that. And with that being said, we need to move back to our discussion about the current situation with the temporary mask mandate. I'll open the floor up for anybody that wants to speak. I will offer personally where I feel things are right now. You know, back up to the meeting where we voted to make mask optional this year, I didn't want masks on the kids. I still don't want masks on the kids, and I stand by that. But the unfortunate situation is we take the mask off the kids in the classroom right now. They get quarantined, they go home. At the end of 9 days of instruction, we had over 600 kids quarantined, and 3 schools were temporarily shut down. That is not what I got on the school board to do. We got to keep the schools open. I think the safest thing we could do for right now is to keep the mask on the kids temporarily, and that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Mr. Ashworth. I would like to say that I truly want these kids in school. I feel like that our children want to be in school, but I also feel like that we need to let masks be optional. I say that because every child is different. They learn in a different scenario. Some learn by seeing the teacher's mouth. Some learn by seeing eye contact. Some learn by somebody writing on a class board. Some learn virtual. Some learn different. We're not saying that we want these children out of school, by no means, because we do. We want them in school. We saw that last year. Our students, our elementary students got to go 5 days a week, but our high school and our middle school, they were out. They just got to go 4 days. Sometimes not that many at the beginning of the year. But I feel like that we have to listen to parents because they do know their children. We know that the teachers see them every day, but they're not home with them overnight. And this is me talking as a grandparent and as a parent, but also as a board member. I have seen COVID affect families in more ways than one this year.
Okay, you good?
And I have to say that I truly believe that our children can strive without the mask. When we first made masks optional, we just gave it 2 weeks. That was coming from a summer vacation, and we didn't give it the options that we gave the mask mandate that we have been since August with a mask mandate, and here it is October. So my thing is, we didn't weigh the option when we first made the mask mandate. And I just ask the board to look at that also when you're making a decision about mask or not mask, because I think we should have looked at that first before we jumped into mask optional or mask mandatory.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Anybody else? With that being said, we have no choice but to have a vote on whether we continue with the temporary mask mandate or not. I'll be looking for a motion and a second on the subject.
I'll make a motion that we make masks optional.
All right, I have a motion and a second for mask optional. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. Opposed, nay? Nay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking for a separate motion that would make the mask mandate still temporary for now. Need a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I would have a few things to add. I think if we're going to continue these mask mandates, we need to be sure that our kids are getting mask breaks. And I want to be sure that they're not wearing them at PE and at recess. And I've personally seen that happening. I thought that our consensus was that they would not be required at PE, at recess, or outside. If our students are walking, I know it's Polk Central and Triumph, they're often outside. That is a perfect time for a mask break. And these students are walking from their classroom to the lunchroom, to PE, to recess, from recess, and they have their masks on. Because the teachers are terrified that another teacher is going to see them with their students not masked, and they're going to be told on it. We need to be sure that they're getting their mask breaks, and if they're outside, they need to be off. We also need to encourage outdoor learning. I know that we have some schools that are doing phenomenally on that, but we have other schools that are not. There needs to be consistency across the board.
I do agree. I think that is something that our board had asked for, and we would like to see some more consistency out of. Ms. Gibbs, you have anything more?
Can we talk about possibly getting the masks off for the younger kids as they're reading and doing phonics?
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second on the floor at this point. So at this point, we'll need to entertain a vote. All those in favor of temporary masks remaining in place, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Okay. Motion carries 5-2. With that said, Danielle, if you want to make another motion
for us to consider for the younger kids. And then we should do that.
I make a motion that we make an addendum to our motion and that we offer masks optional during reading, phonics, literacy, or reworded learning time for our elementary school children.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I think before I would feel comfortable voting. I think before I'd feel comfortable voting on that, I would love a whole lot more information on how, how many kids are in a reading group, what that dynamic looks like. I don't feel like I have enough information to make an educated decision on those specific timeframes in school. When we talked about when kids are outside or when they're in PE, I feel like we had a lot of data to back up that decision. And while I don't necessarily disagree with you, I would just like to have more information before we made that larger change. I think it could send a lot of mixed messages to the teachers, to the kids in classrooms, and we really don't know what risk we're exposing our kids to if we don't know specifically what those environments look like.
It's the same kids for each lunch with them.
Please, no more. So with that being said, any further discussion? Mr. Green, hey guys, that's enough. Yes, it is. Whoever that is, Mr. Wright, would you please have them removed now? Folks, listen, we're not doing this anymore, okay? Either be respectful or please leave.
We have been respectful. We're not getting.
You're not being respectful at all right now.
We've not got to see.
Please leave. Please leave. Okay, folks. So in general premise, Eric, Mr. Green, how long are these class sessions in school time?
So I can tell you there are already examples when teachers do assessments, for example, on M-Class, when they need to see that students are articulating. When a teacher needs to show a phonics lesson, for example, we are distance and allow that to happen. There are also breaks during class when they have snacks and different things. I definitely don't mind looking at the Henderson County model, talking with the folks up there to see what they do. My assumption is that when a student is called upon to read, so that a teacher can truly, assess their developmental appropriateness in terms of enunciation, other words and those things, and then when they're reading aloud, those would be brief instances in time. And I certainly don't mind getting that information to the board quickly in case we wanted to make an adjustment there on that end of it. It's not, it's not where you're going to have necessarily a student reading a passage for 20 or 30 minutes. We're talking about small bursts, especially with the younger students that are involved. We already give them, 5-minute mass breaks. They get mass breaks when they're eating snacks in the classroom. So extending that to something like a literacy lesson or a phonics lesson where that student is being asked to read is not a question. I'll be happy to go to the Henderson County folks and see exactly how they implemented that and make sure we understand it and get back to the board.
I am, in general premise, not opposed, myself personally, to what is being proposed. I do think I'd like to have some information before we went down that road.
We have a motion in the second, so.
We do have to take a vote. So with that being said, this is for K through 5. Is that correct, Danielle? I think we need to have a motion restated so we understand what we're voting on fully. So your motion is that we have
Masks optional during literacy.
during literacy for K through 5. Mask optional during literacy. Mr. Green?
I need that clarified, because you're gonna take off the entire literacy lesson. ELA blocks are an hour and a half in school. So are we talking about just when the student is reading?
I think the students need to be able to see their teachers.
Yes, and teachers, when they're doing phonics lessons, do remove their 6 feet away. They're 6 feet away at the front of the room, given that freedom, especially where phonics are important. So that's already taking place. I can read, that to principals that a brief takeoff when you're doing a phonics lesson. I think the clarification on the student side needs to be, we're talking about just when they're required to read out loud to the teacher, especially during assessments or the time when they're called on in class, take their mask down and read. I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't know exactly what the details of the Henderson, County model are, but that is generally what I've heard in discussions with folks there. Teachers are allowed to do that when they're making a presentation, especially on phonics to kids. And then their students, from what I understand, when they are reading back, especially in the lower grades where they have to see the formation of the word, they're allowed to take that mask down temporarily to do that. That is my understanding of their model. I would need to clarify that before I can speak further on. But if you're talking about the entire ELA block for every kid, then that's going to be an extended period of time for all those kids at birth.
Any further discussion? Because we do have a motion and a second on the table.
I still don't really understand the motion. I mean, are we talking about one time? The whole.
If the child's called on.
One child.
Right.
But is that already not being done? Is that not what you just said, Mr. Green?
But the only place where that wouldn't apply necessarily is actually in the classroom setting. So most of the time when we're doing in-class assessments, those students are taken to a corner of the room or out in the hallway, so there can be privacy there for the student and teacher to be, able to do the assessment. And so they're separated from the other groups. So I think what Ms. Gibbs is proposing is similar to the Henderson County model, which I think they extended into the classroom when reading is taking place by a child, similar to what the rules are for presenters when they get up in front of a room that you can remove the face covering and say those things. So I don't want to be accused of putting words into anybody's mouth, but I think the motion would be along the lines of we encourage our teachers to use the leeway that we've already given them in terms of phonics lessons and showing kids how to enunciate words with literacy. That's actually mentioned in the toolkit. That's something we've allowed teachers to do. And then also to have students, when they are reading back to the teacher or to the classroom, allow them to remove their mask temporarily while that's taking place. Is that what you're getting at?
You second that, Ms. Jackson? Okay, got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion at this point? Are you looking for a show of hands, yay or nay? All in favor, please say aye. Raise your right hand. Aye. Opposed, nay?
I'm not saying, I'm still totally confused about exactly what we're.
Well, the motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind a bit of clarification, I will be happy to get those specifics from Henderson County, shoot that back to the board as soon as possible. As with any change that we implement, our folks on the ground level are going to need specifics from an operational standpoint. So me going tomorrow and trying to explain something that is not quite tight enough will be difficult. So if you don't mind, I'd like that leeway to make sure I understand fully what that Henderson County model is. I can shoot it to you within the next day or so. And then if you wouldn't mind as a board giving me that time to implement, hopefully you guys can respond individually back to me, say, yes, this is what I'm talking about. And then we can implement that with clear guidelines.
Everybody good with that? Okay. That being said, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. For safe schools, okay, safe schools, attorney-client privilege, and personnel. I have a second. Okay, all in favor, please, let me say that. Aye.